My name is Elias. I'm 24 years old, and for the last 4 years of my life, I have been the sole keeper of the Whistling Rock Lighthouse. It's a lonely stretch of coast, all jagged black cliffs and a sea that's more often gray than blue. The lighthouse isn't my family's legacy, it was my escape. After university didn't work out and the world felt too loud, too crowded, the silence here seemed like a sanctuary. I was wrong. Silence isn't empty, it's just waiting to be filled. The Whistling Rock gets its name from the sound the wind makes as it forces itself through the countless fissures and sea caves at the cliff's base. It's a constant, low, mournful whistle, a sound so perpetual you stop hearing it, the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. You only feel it. The previous keeper, an old, weathered man named Finnegan, had only one piece of advice for me when I took the job. He packed his few belongings into a duffel bag, looked at me with eyes like worn sea glass, and said, "You mind the calm, son. And you never, ever mind the singing. It's not for you." I'd laughed it off, assuming he'd just been alone too long. I learned the routines quickly, maintaining the Great Fresnel lens, logging weather data, checking the supplies that came by boat every fortnight. The days bled into weeks, then months. The solitude was a bomb. But at night, the world changed. It started subtly. I'd be reading in my chair, the wind howling outside, and I'd hear a new note woven into the whistle. A clear, high-pitched tone, like a glass bell being struck underwater. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic. I'd strain my ears, and it would be gone, swallowed by the gale. I wrote it off as the wind playing tricks, a new flaw in the rock's ancient melody. But the tone returned. Night after night, it grew clearer, more distinct. It wasn't a random note anymore, it was a melody. A slow, sad, and incredibly ancient siren song that seemed to drift not from the sea, but from the very rock the lighthouse stood upon. It was the most beautiful and the most lonely sound I had ever heard. It spoke of depths and darkness and things long forgotten. And then the dreams began. I'd dream of walking down the spiral staircase, not to the supply room, but further down, past the foundation, into the heart of the black rock. In the dream, the stairs never ended, twisting down into a damp, cold darkness that smelled of salt and decay. And the song was louder there, pulling me down. I'd always wake up just as I saw a faint, phosphorescent glow ahead, my heart hammering against my ribs, the melody still echoing in my skull. I started looking tired. The boatman who brought my supplies, a gruff man named Alistair, noticed. "The rock getting to you, lad?" he asked, not unkindly. "Just the wind," I lied. "It plays strange tricks at night." Alistair's face grew serious. "Aye, it does. You just remember it's the wind. Old Finnegan used to say the same. He said the rock learns the sound of your thoughts and sings them back to you. Just don't be listening for an answer." His words chilled me more than the sea spray. That night, the song was clearer than ever. It wasn't just a melody now, it was a call. It felt personal, meant for me. Driven by a compulsion I couldn't explain, I did something I'd never done before. I went to the one place Finnegan had explicitly told me was off-limits, the old storm cellar. It was a rusted iron door set into the stone floor at the back of the supply room, bolted shut. Finnegan's logs had mentioned it was used once, a century ago, but was now unstable, its walls too close to the cliff face. But the song, it seemed to be emanating from behind that door. I wrestled with the stiff bolts for 10 minutes before the door creaked open, revealing a steep, narrow set of steps carved directly into the rock. A cold, damp breath of air washed over me, carrying that same smell from my dreams, salt, wet stone, and something else. Something organic and old. The song was a clear, guiding thread. I descended, my flashlight beam a frail, bouncing thing against the oppressive darkness. The steps went down far deeper than I imagined, twisting and turning. The Whistling Rock's normal wind song was gone, replaced entirely by that crystalline, aquatic melody. It was leading me. I found myself in a natural cavern. The air was frigid. My light swept across the walls, and I gasped. They were covered in strange, faint carvings. Not pictures, but swirling, spiraling patterns that made me dizzy to look at. They looked less like art and more like a language, or a mathematical equation meant for a mind not human. And in the center of the cavern, lying on a flat stone altar, was the source of the glow from my dreams. It was a large, perfectly smooth disk of what looked like mother of pearl, but it glowed with a soft, internal blue-green light. It was about the size of a wagon wheel, and its surface seemed to swirl like oil on water. And the song was coming from it. The disk was vibrating, humming, producing that impossibly beautiful and devastatingly lonely sound. I was mesmerized. I approached it, my fear forgotten, replaced by an overwhelming sense of awe. The song filled my head, pushing out every other thought. It promised answers. It promised an end to loneliness. It promised to show me the wonders of the deep, forgotten world. I reached out a hand. The moment my fingertips brushed the cold, smooth surface, the song stopped. The silence was more deafening than any sound. The cavern plunged into absolute blackness for a heart-stopping second before my flashlight flickered back on. The carvings on the wall were no longer faint. They were pulsing with the same phosphorescent light as the disk. And the disk itself, its surface was no longer smooth. It was shifting, coalescing. It formed into a perfect, lifelike image of my own face, my eyes wide with terror. Then it shifted to the face of my mother, who passed away years ago. Then to Finnegan, his eyes pleading. It was a kaleidoscope of every regret, every memory, every fear I'd ever possessed. A new sound began. A low, wet, scraping sound from the tunnel behind me. I turned, my blood freezing in my veins. Something was pulling itself out of a narrow fissure in the cavern wall. It was long and pallid, the color of a drowned thing. It had no discernible face, only a smooth, eyeless head that tapered to a point. But its body, it was wrong. It moved with a boneless, gelatinous grace, dragging itself forward with long, thin appendages that were neither arms nor legs. It was drawn to the disk, to the light, to the feast of my memories being projected upon it. This was the listener. This was what the song was for. It wasn't a siren's call to lure sailors. It was a dinner bell. I stumbled backward, my sanity crumbling. The thing ignored me, gliding toward the disk. It pressed its smooth head against the image of Finnegan's terrified face, and a sound came from it, a deep, satisfied sigh of absorption. It was feeding on the memories, on the emotions, on the psychic energy the disk had pulled from my mind. I ran. I scrambled up those crumbling steps, sobbing with terror, expecting a cold, slick appendage to wrap around my ankle at any second. I burst into the supply room, slammed the iron door shut, and drove the bolts home, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the door, a kitchen knife in my hand, listening. But I heard nothing. No song. No scraping. Just the familiar, mournful whistle of the wind. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, a waking nightmare born of isolation. But I couldn't. The memory was too vivid, too real. And something else was wrong. I couldn't remember my mother's laugh. I could picture her face, but the sound, the specific, joyful melody of it, was gone. Ripped clean out of my head. A vital, cherished memory, stolen and fed upon. The boat came a week later. Alistair found me a wreck. I didn't tell him about the cavern or the thing. I just quit. I gave him the keys, packed a single bag, and left on his boat. I didn't look back. I live in a small, noisy city now. The crowds and the constant sound are a comfort. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind blows just right through a telephone wire or an alleyway, I hear it. A faint, clear, high-pitched note woven into the noise. It's not the wind. It's the song. And it's a little louder each time. It's reminding me that a connection was made. A door was opened in my mind that can't be fully closed. It knows it left a piece of itself inside me. And it's hungry to get it back.